Hello, everyone, and welcome to our episode today. It's entitled The Egregore of Americanism, and we are super excited to bring this topic to you because we think it's so important. We have the Catholic state with us, our friend John Carter. We've read a few books this week in preparation. We'll let you know what those are, but we've been thinking about this for a long time. So I want to begin this episode by explaining what we are up to. We are going to briefly talk about the idea of Americanism. It's a huge concept, but we're going to pitch it this way. The idea of the egregore, we're going to define and develop that. That's this mind prison. That's where we're going with this. Americanism has become a mind prison upon the whole world. We're going to develop that, and it's part of the great deception. So in big terms, that is what we're going to be looking at. We're going to ask the question, why are we talking about Americanism? Are we some kind of academic nerds? We want to live in the Middle Ages? Are we anti-capitalists? And we're really hitting this today from the idea that it is a mind virus that's spread throughout the whole world. It's a mind prison, demonically charged. And it's leading people to not ask some fundamental questions about how the world has become disorganized, and our minds following that have become disorganized. So those are the big things. We want to look at, first of all, why are we studying this? Why are we asking this question? We want to look at how it's created a disordered cosmic and social order that's affected our own minds. And finally, we want to see and think about how it's a tool of the great deception. And just to begin the show here, what I want us to think about this larger theme here, we're going to be, by the way, developing the books that we read this week were The Star-Spangled Heresy and a more academic piece by Andrew Willard Jones, The End of Sovereignty, and Essay in Christian Post-Liberalism. But more largely here, this is a very central idea in my book, In Pursuit of the Metaverse. So it's a central idea, especially the chapter we're dealing with right now, chapter 4, the visual empire. So we're working on that over in Locals. In both of my books, the egregore, which didn't appear as a concept on YouTube before 2020, I systematically developed so we can start understanding why this question and the Great Deception is important to think about the connections between the two. So those are the books we're referring to. We're also going to use Catholic State wrote an article on this, so we're going to be bringing that in as well and hooking all this together. At the end of the show, we're going to go over to Memory Hold Friday, and we're going to kind of get into more edgy stuff over there off YouTube. But in general, what we're doing here is we are going to, by the way, let me put this up here. This week, we delved into this topic on on Metaverse Monday, and we looked at the roots of Americanism. And I wanted to hit it down there for a few weeks because it's such an important topic. But in short, it's a falling away from reality. It's a falling away from God's being. So it's a movement. We looked at the two big pieces of this, from the Protestant Revolution to the French Revolution, French/American revolutions, into the Industrial Revolution. And one of the kind of ideas of falling away from reality is a shift in the visual economy. So that's what we're doing on Monday. Again, links are in the description. We do 3 shows every week. This show was about an hour and a half long. And then on Wednesday, Connect the Dots. This show went over. It was unfortunately a bit long. It was 2 hours and 20 minutes. But we're connecting these big ideas. We're talking about stable coin, a big new economic infrastructure. Over on Locals today, we're going to talk about moves to give away more land to the oligarchs in preparation of this beast machine. But we were connecting that with Noahide and reminding what Noahide is and how it fits together. But on top of all that, one of the key dots is the Catholic influencers came out this week and suddenly drew a line. I have a footnote in a recent chapter I wrote. There's been hundreds of churches bombed or desecrated in the last 20 years in the Middle East, all American funded, by the way. So it's literally Americans bombing Christian churches, if you want to look at it that way. And why? What was the event this week that made people suddenly, it was this church? That was a line too far. So we looked at the Catholic influencers, but we connected all of these dots. Again, links are in the description for our locals community. And before I get any further here, I do want to mention that we will be bringing up some of our community comments now and again in some episodes we're going to do up here to tie some of the episodes from our community, because we have so many amazing ideas cooking from our community members. So that's something we're going to do in the forward. In a big picture here, what we're doing, again, is looking from a transition from Christian empire where things are properly ordered. And one of the arguments here is that in such an order, our minds are attuned to a properly ordered Christian world where the church is on top of the state, the father's on top of the family, there's a proper anthropology, the church has a proper ecclesiology, relationship with the world. And once you turn that over, starting with the Protestant Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution, it becomes increasingly disordered. So when the church's ecclesiology becomes misplaced, categories of thought become misplaced. Because what we're going to find out is essentially, I'm going to read in a moment here, an idea from Carl Schmitt, that all of these modern theories of the state are metaphysical concepts taken from Christian empire and misplaced. In a sense, they're egregores. They're ideas charged from below, and they create they participate in a demonic ontology of the empire of spectacle, using all these words again. I don't want to get too lost, but this is the big thing. So how are we transitioning from Christian empire, when we're living our consciousnesses in a properly ordered world, into an Antichrist empire? And what we're arguing here is that key to this transition of body, minds, and spirits from the Christian world order to an Antichrist world order, the critical mechanism is the egregore of Americanism. And we've gone along as Catholics, as good Christians, whether we're Protestant or Catholic, we've gone along with this for a long time, but it's leading us into a great deception. We wonder, how can Americans literally be supporting the third temple and the bringing on of Antichrist? And on the Catholic side, how we're not resisting this and many times participating in this. And so it's at that level. It's not that we want to bring the world back to the Middle Ages, is that we want to identify this as a mind prison and be able to fight the forces of evil by really sometimes identifying, discerning, and detaching ourselves mentally from that space. And that is something that the philosopher Andrew Willard Jones does at a very deep and technical philosophical level. And so do many other contemporary philosophers. So we're going to kind of go with this conversation somewhere between the very archaic academic, and on the egregore side, we're not going to get too much into the esoteric. We're going to try to keep it right in the middle and just say, or just trying to describe how it participates. Americanism is part of this great deception. And for Americans in our audience, a lot of us in the last 5 years have come out of this to some exception and seen it's the same between the Bush doctrine and the Obama doctrine and the Biden doctrine and the Trump doctrine. And essentially this enterprise is a cover for oligarchy bringing on a new age. And I think, what do we do at that point? And we're going to maybe think about that, but we're going to focus especially on the Great Deception. So I've talked quite a bit right now. I'm going to have you guys open up the conversation with some of the thoughts that you thought especially grabbed you this week. Why don't I start with you, Catholic State?
Doug, thank you. As you were pointing out before, I wrote an article a few years ago called Americanism, an Insidious Heresy That Needs to Be Killed. It's on my website, christtheking.info. Just
Thank you.
use the search function and put in Americanism in the search function. You'll find it. And
say it one more time for everybody. Say it real clear for everybody, Justin.
christtheking.info and use the search function for Americanism. And the article is called Americanism, an Insidious Heresy That Needs to Be Killed. So I wrote this article. I basically summarized Pope Leo XIII's Testem Benevolentiae Nostrae, which condemns the heresy of Americanism. And and the reason I wrote this article in the first place is because I wrote an article before this. This is right after I started writing articles showing how the church condemns separation of the church and state. And I had so many Catholics or people that call themselves Catholics come at me and attack me saying, how can you say the church can condemn separation of the church and state? Well, this is America. Separation of church and state is part of our identity, which shocked me, frankly, because we're supposed to be Catholics and we're supposed to put the church before the state, right? And that's really one of the biggest insidious parts of this heresy, is that so-called Catholics that are Americans have bought into this liberal Democrat ideology that the state is sovereign above everything, even the church, which is flipped, turned upside down of what is actually the legitimate order, right? Now, let me say this. Technically speaking, it doesn't really matter what your form of government is, as long as it is subjugated to the Catholic Church as far as in faith and morality. For instance, throughout the Middle Ages, we mostly had monarchies, but in Christendom, but we did have republics. We had maritime republics, such as the Republic of Venice, which lasted for over 1,000 years. But here's the thing: even in that time, the republics were rightly ordered by subjecting themselves to the church, right? So even in the Republic of Venice, the Doge, which was an elected position, was like the elected president, right? Well, as soon as he was elected, the Pope, there would be a papal coronation for him, just like there would be a monarch, right? The papal coronation of the Doge, and he would be subject to the church. So there would be no such thing as voting on whether abortion, for instance, would be legal, because it would be unheard of, because of the fact that the state was subject to the church, right? In a rightly ordered way. So this is really kind of the biggest part of the heresy, is the fact that the church and state is disordered, right? And in liberalism, and in this heresy of Americanism, which is just a form of liberalism, the church is subjected to the state, right? And so it's unfortunately become, part of the egregor, as you call it, where this mind virus, where everybody that considers themselves an American kind of embraces this free Masonic liberal mentality that the state should be supreme to everything, even the church, right? And when that happens, that means because liberalism is always about progress and change and evolution and just constant revolution. It gets to the point like we have now, where it's like you have to either be a heretic, a blatant heretic, to support this type of insidious mentality, or just completely jump ship and become like us, like me, Doug, and John here, where we're just like, no, you can't support this at all. I mean, because you even look at the political parties today, it's like the left wing, they're new liberals, they're progressive liberals, right? But the right wing is classic liberals, libertarians, right? I mean, there's liberalism is both parties are liberal, right? So both parties are staunchly in the camp of the Americanist heresy, and until you get out of this egregor, reframe things in a Catholic Christian, pro-Christendom stance, you're never going to leave this mind virus.
Yeah, that's one of the arguments from Andrew Willard Jones, at a very high academic level, is that we have to rethink the categories. We're we're competing on their turf, and we're always going to win. We're just going to be characters in their drama, in their theater setting, that we're the medievalists that are just kind of the joke on the side. There's also a school of thought called radical orthodoxy that comes out of the UK. And we have to fight this by redefining the categories, not playing on those terms. But before I go to John and I talk about this a lot. And that was very good, by the way, Justin. Great opening. We've already lost the Protestants. Okay. I'm going to read an article right now. Not every Protestant. We do have to have a certain merger of mind with some, but Protestants basically work on the presupposition that it's okay to operate within a separation of church and state. But I want to get this ball rolling with one good Protestant argument. But we need especially to appeal to traditional Catholics. If traditional Catholics are out there calling themselves conservative, supporting the Republican Party or the Tories, or they're pro-Zionist, they're inside of the egregor. And we have to get Catholics, especially because we're going to be the last bulwark against this Antichrist system that's going to use this energy. Americanism is part of, this is the esoteric definition. It's a collective psychic entity that emerges from shared thoughts and emotions. It takes on an influence. So the system itself becomes the conspiracy, right? Like the military industrial complex. It has its own logic of taking you into the next order. So it influences the system itself. So when you're going along, that's why I say we're at a point we have to really question if you want to vote for somebody that comes in and has lied that much to you and is aligned to the dark side. But you're part now of the egregore. It's hard to detach. So that's why especially we want to appeal to traditional Catholics to think through this concept of what's going on. So I, in my books, have systematically given it a Catholic spin. And so in addition to that psychic force, it has a demonic ontology, just like the spectacle of empire. It's operating because when our minds operate in consenting to this disordered arrangement, our thinking gets captured, our paradigm of reality. So egregores, by their nature, are ideological. They're isms. And the way we escape it and get back to base reality is try to understand the traditional social order of the Catholic Church. Even if we're Protestants, it's going to be helpful for us to step aside. And as Justin just said, either it's classical liberalism or progressive liberalism, but they're both part of, as we say, the left-right dialectic. It's part of the mimetic power in that dialectic. It's not until you see the dialectic, and that's how the oligarchs have done this for centuries. This is nothing new. Plato recognized this. The ancients recognized it. And the framers of America recognized it. That's why they said the worst form of government was democracy. It's power from below. It's demonic power from below. That's what the serpent's going to use. The Antichrist will be the summation of all of these misplaced categories and thoughts, the meta egregor. So what the framers of America, I'm sorry, John, I'll get to you and I'll try to shush up here, realized this. And they said, we're not going to create a democracy. I think there was a conspiracy going on, with these Masons, but I'm not going to get into that. But in 1776, they borrowed these ideas because essentially what Andrew Willard Jones is talking about, we have to get away from this Hobbesian modern system based on Hobbesianism, that it's a war of all against all, and it's for protection because then we'll seek the state, which is really just the grand oligarchy of things. So until we get out of that, and what is the alternative? It's the Catholic understanding, which is the common good. And you get words like subsidiarity and integralism, where all parts of the economy and social thoughts had really one function. What's good for the greatest bulk of us, not in a utilitarian Benzian thing, but the function was to bring as many souls to heaven as possible. This is Christ the King. That this is a whole order built around power coming from above. The transition into the world of Antichrist is power coming from below. And the framers of America realized that. Although they'd been detached from the Catholic order for a couple centuries, they realized that. So who did they draw from? Baron Montesquieu, the French jurist philosopher, who said because Justin said it's possible to live in a properly ordered republic separate from the monarch and still be attached to God's essence, these universal forms. So they said, we're going to make it in 1776 based upon the common good. But Montesquieu said, here's the trick. Republics have to be small, familial. These are where you get words like subsidiarity and bringing the economy together, family orientated. You can talk, politics is local. And that's why in American Republic in 1776 till 1789, the idea was they had to be small and local to maintain the common good. That's what you call a constitutional republic. That's where the checks and balances are at. So the great conspiracy in America was between 1776 and 1789. That's when they allowed the federal government to break apart this, because Montesquieu said if it's small, you'll stay inside of a order that's there in function. Its raison d'etre, reason to be, will be to maintain the common good. That's the essential mission of the Catholic social order. Come 1789, the new federal constitution, judicial acts like 1803, Mulberry versus Madison is going to kind of become the thread that pulls that apart, and the federal government would come to dominate that system and open up a larger the ability for oligarchs to put their agenda in there and break up the common good. It took another 100 years or so for it to be destroyed. But what happened, I know I'm talking too much. Tocqueville came into America knowing what the old order was. And he looked at America, this weird experiment, and he looked at the difference between the two constitutions from 1776 and 1789. And he thought, this thing is the future of the world, what I now call the empire of spectacle. The common good is no longer located in a tight locality. It's been opened up, and it's become a war of all against all. It's about me. It's about materialism. It's about me substituting a grand transcendent experience with what St. Thomas would call a debased ecstasy of keeping up with my neighbors with prosperity. And we've all bought into this. We can't even get out of it. We can just barely get our heads above water to kind of see what we've become part of. But this is the world. And so Andrew Willard Jones and many of the articles we've been reading are saying, like, how do we now find a vantage point and a discourse to have to rethink how the world would be properly ordered in order to get our minds properly ordered. So yes, so this thing in America now, Americanism, is just really one and the same as the empire of spectacle. It's the base fuel, these suppositions about why we're here in what we would call the Valley of Tears. And it becomes about this atomized individual, just getting what you can, being number one. And that mindset is very corrupting. And it's what leads us into the great deception that sacred scripture talks about. And what we're trying to do is find a discourse, find communities. And we're not on our own here. I think some of the top Catholic thinkers and the best metaphysicians are asking this exact same question. And so some people, they dismiss it. It seems nerdy. It seems medieval. It's absolutely necessary to get out of the dialectic. And let me just say this, when I say why ask this question, libertarians abound all over as an alternative. And libertarianism, there's never been a libertarian, there's no such thing as anarchy. Some form of government, like the ancients, this would be a bizarre world. You're either going to have monarchy, oligarchy, or some sort of perverted democracy. And they move in phases. And when you finally realize, the ancients realized this, when democracy is a facade for oligarchy, the next thing you have is tyranny. It's predictable cycles. The people, the framers of the United States realized the predictability of these cycles. So, well, I'm going to leave it at that. But the ancients definitely realized that there was, and again, the framers of America in 1770, they realized from 100 years earlier that the British Civil War brought on this just demonic mindset, and they were very concerned because this is before the French Revolution. They realized that there's a contagion involved when power comes from below, and especially if it's legitimized. It's exactly an ancient trick for oligarchies to trap your mind and get you to go with the flow. You could say, why did everybody go along with COVID? And on and on. Why is nobody questioning? Why are we giving all these dollars to destroy churches? And that's why we're coming back to baseline with Americanism. Okay, John, sorry about the long spiel. I'm going to let you talk.
Sure. Well, I think this is a imperative to nail this because it is of the most importance to what's happening in the world today. And for me, I'd like to keep it simple, stupid, and look at it not from a philosophical level, more as a world history, church history. And whereby in 1789, with the ratification of the U.S. Constitution, the French Revolution, the collapse of Christian law and order, it left the church at the mercy of the state. But that didn't happen in a vacuum. And it started with Lucifer's fall and his apostasy in the spiritual realm that then brought it to the temporal realm. And then that temporal realm spread across the earth, and its last expansion was to the Americas. And the fight of the Americas is the fight, the last fight. It's the last battle. In America, which 300 years prior had been, consecrated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, is where this apostasy was forged into a political weapon and institutionalized. And it became the base of operations of Satan. It became the new Atlantis. And it's just irrefutable. It's just irrefutable. If you have a clear conscience and truly are honest, intellectually honest in studying history. And so today you fast forward to 2025, or even when I was a kid in the 70s, and my grandmother would absolutely go ballistic over rock and roll. Walmart that opened up on Sunday. There was no commerce on Sunday. People don't even know that anymore. And today you have soccer practice all day long on Sunday, or soccer tournaments. We have divorce, contraception, abortion, sodomy, sins that cry to heaven for vengeance. We spread that to the world. The 20th century, it was the American century that saw worldwide acceptance of democratic principles. And it allowed the sin of Eden to come to full flower throughout society globally. And God's holy faith that was given to us to safeguard in the Catholic Church under the guidance and the keys of Peter was forgotten. And anyway, today each individual directs himself. Our whole goal is to strive above our peers, to do everything that we can to protect ourselves. iCloud, uh, and that ultimately, if you look at the church itself, it was founded by Bishop Carroll, hand selected by deist Freemasons, hand selected, the very creation of the Catholic Church in the United States, so that make sure that it was an indigenous faith to the Americas, and that American orders would have no foreign ties, and that they would conform to democratic ideals. And so they basically made a Catholic faith in the U.S. that was kosher.
Yep.
And it supported Masonic government. And so from the very get-go, we were always had this low self-esteem, this insecurity about who we are. And as a result, I love the quote in the book where Solange Hertz says that Catholics today are nothing more than Protestants that go to Mass. And Novus Ordo Secularum. And look, that was me. That was me. I look back and say, goodness gracious. So through this is a first person account of Americanism. It's real. It is the single most dangerous heresy. I mean, you say modernism is the compilation of all heresies, but America the sin of Americanism, the sin is the weapon that was used to topple the world through our military and through our financial means. And so, and today we are, it's just irrefutable when you look at American society, and how in the world could you think that a guy that's is a pimp who runs casinos, prostitution, and drugs be president of the United States with yellow hair? That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, John, it is. It is. And how the devil's got us ever since the garden is the baseline. It's this promise of freedom. It is the
Yeah.
promise of freedom. And I think Catholic state can speak to a lot of those ideas where the Catholic Church became kosher. Even though these were dogmatically refuted Americanism. So to be Catholic, you really have to be anti-Americanism. That's what we have to start understanding. And I'm sure Catholic state will do that. I want to read something really quickly from a Protestant. I just found it. I don't know who the Protestant is, but the Protestant in many ways sounds more Catholic than most Catholics here. So let me just read from this person, Peter Leithart, on the heresy of Americanism. America and empire in a biblical perspective. Americanism has a way of reading the Bible, with Americans sometimes playing a prominent role in the biblical story as the new Israel, beacon on a hill. And eschatology, America is the new order of the ages and the last best hope of mankind. All Masonic concepts, by the way. A doctrine of political salvation, what I call in my books, political religion, a doctrine of political salvation. Everyone becomes like us and all will be well. Spread democracy all over the world, bomb them into democracy. And since the Civil War, a view of sacrifice. American soldiers give their lives and take the lives of the enemies to make the world a peaceful and free. The practical effect of Americanism is that it blinds, here we go. The practical effect of Americanism is that it blinds Christians to the real evils that America has perpetrated, and also obscures the central importance of the church as God's empire on earth. And there can be only one church. Americanism encourages Christians to support the American cause no matter what, because the future of the world depends on America. Even when we're bombing civilizations and sending billions of dollars in military aid to Muslim dictators, Christians will wave the flag and sing American praises. And for some Christians, criticism of America is almost tantamount to apostasy. A few ways to combat Americanism. Teaching the Bible means teaching Christians that they are Christians first before they're Americans. It means teaching them that they are Christian brothers in Iran and Iraq, are closer kin than American unbelievers. Teaching the Bible means attacking the idolaters associated with Americanism. Teaching the Bible means teaching people not to kill, even if the American government says it's okay. Can I say that one again? Teaching the Bible means teaching people not to kill, even if the American government says it's okay. And Catholics, that includes not just the unborn, but actual people that are actual Christians or not, that live in commune in churches and so forth. Another obvious thing, practical church discipline. Pastors need to be willing to enforce biblical standards, even if those biblical standards come into direct contact with American interests and aims. And again, they don't do that at the Protestant 501c3 churches, according to just wartime tradition to which I adhere. Killing in war is just only if the war is just. When the last time Christians judged an America, when was the last time Christians judged an American war as unjust? And there's a little bit more, and I think you guys get the idea. Justin, I'd like to have you come in. This is the Catholic state.
Yeah. So there's so many ideas here. So going back to what John was saying and everything before about the Garden of Eden, I mean, really, this is the primary thing, right? This is like ye shall, what Satan says, ye shall be as gods, right? This is kind of like the central theme here of all liberalism. It's Luciferian, right? It's making, instead of worshiping the one external God, it's making myself God, right? I mean, and this is kind of like, yeah, it's the backbone of the whole thing, because when you look at, like, in reading the books we were reading, you look at it like a lot of this stuff, this mentality. I mean, it starts with Kabbalah, right? It starts with, like what the Jews did in rejecting Christ, right? They rejected God, right? Christ is God. They rejected God. So what happens when you reject God? Well, you make yourself as God, right? The Talmud replaces the Torah, right? The Talmud becomes the new holy book, and the Torah is just interpreted based on how the Talmud says it should be interpreted, right? And then you get like stuff like Kabbalah and stuff like that. And Kabbalah, what is the purpose of Kabbalah? Well, instead of embracing God's will for how controlling the elements, controlling natural reality, it's imposing your own will on reality. And this is what Aleister Crowley says when he says, thy will be done shall be the whole of the law, right? It's imposing your own will on reality. And, and this is what you see. And like when we were reading these books about, they were talking about the alchemists, right? And then how alchemy led to science and stuff like that. And you see this even today in science, where it's like, they call it post-God, this post-God mentality of, we don't need God. We figure out how the world works, and we control it, right? And whereas, like true alchemy, true science should be like discovering how God made the world in order to help yourself worship him and understand him better, right? That's what true alchemy and true science should be, is understanding God's creation better and understanding how to work with his creation better in order to better people out of love, better mankind out of love, but not to control it. And this insidious satanic Luciferian mentality of ye shall be as gods, make myself like unto a god, has pervaded that, right? And now instead of seeing scientists, you see scientism, which is like this worship of science. Science will prevail. This faith you see from all these like atheists, especially new atheists, science will prevail. They have this unyielding faith that science will understand everything and be able to control everything, even being able to solve the problem of mortality, making people immortal, right? Making people like cyborgs, like robots, in order to, because evolution becomes the new religion too, because everything must evolve, right? And we must, God, which is in their minds is ourselves, we must evolve in order to overcome ourselves. It's the Nietzschean idea of the Übermensch, right? We must overcome ourselves through scientism, through this post-God, we are the gods, age of rationalism, right? I mean, everything I said, and lots of stuff there, very dense, but yeah, I mean, this is the pervasive mentality, right? And this is also the backbone of Americanism, of liberalism itself, but of Americanism, of like, okay, ye shall be as gods. Even when you look at the transgender garbage, right? It's like, well, God assigned them a sex at birth, right? Yep. But they don't acknowledge that because they see themselves as their own God. So they're just like, but I identify as this, so let me use science to become the thing I identify as, because I'm my own God. I'm my own arbiter of truth. So this is the American mentality. It is a Luciferian, Freemasonic, synagogue of Satan mentality. And this is, and in order to overcome this, we have to leave that egregor. We have to leave that meta frame and redefine our own frame, right? And learn how to be Christians, be Catholics, try to restore Christendom without buying into the dialectic that has been presented to us.
Very nice, Justin. The opening chapter here of the Visual Empire, I'll just read it. It's one sentence from Carl Schmitt, 1922. He was the creator of the Nazi millennium, and the idea, he kind of created the legal constitutional order. And so, one of the themes, the subtitle of this book, again, links are in the description. The link to our locals community, we do 3 presentations a week. We will go over there after this presentation. So the links are there. It's $5 a month to be part of the community. And just reminding y'all, the subtitle of In Pursuit of the Metaverse. The Metaverse is part of the Antichrist system, where it's completely blocking you from transcendent ideas, putting you into a complete, as Justin just said, self-referential reality, one large egregor where you're separated from transcendent thoughts. So again, one of the ideas of reality, it's the idea of the transcendent, the universal, Plato would say, is connected with our earthly experience. And in the middle, we kind of bring that to the fullness. Christ's incarnation, the divine logos becoming man, sealed that together. So our cosmic order could kind of be the reality, could seeing these 2 things come together. We're living in an inaugurated eschatology. We kind of see we're participating in part in transcendence, in the millennial age, which is the church. I know that's a lot of repeated stuff. So Carl Schmitt says here in 1922, what they're building, all significant concepts of modern theory of the state are secularized theological concepts. That's what Justin was just saying. In the garden, God said, you can do it my way, and you can lead me. I'll lead you into transcendence, into the beatific vision. And the serpent said, do it my way, which is essentially what we call naturalism. God offers us the natural order and natural laws. The serpent perverts that, and it's naturalism. So he's going to take all those heavenly concepts like the millennialism and put it into the future, like premillennialism, postmillennialism. A lot of Protestant thought goes in that direction. And so essentially it's naturalizing these ideas from the church. They're taking nothing new because they're universal forms and they're simply putting it on the ground. So he said, that's what's going on. That's what communism did. It said, there are no gods, there are no saints, Luther Protestant, there's no transcendent order, right? And so they are creating a self-referential reality. The state will in part define the order for you. Where we get, somehow we think that Zionism is not the same thing. Zionism, working from the Talmud and the Torah, is doing the same thing, taking these millennial ideas and putting them down into the natural. So you're in the dialectic thinking with power coming from below in either case. Now, what happens in this order, and why are we talking about this before I go back to John? I want to play briefly. It's from a couple newscasters, a couple podcasters that I watch. They happen to be Jewish, and that's we break down some of these things over on Locals. But one of the points is this idea, let's just not talk about all of the bombing going on. Let's just not call it out. Let's not call out the October 7th event. Let's just play nice. Let's just do the Vatican II Nostra Aetate thing and see where it gets us. One of the points I mentioned is these 2 Jewish men are going to pull up this clip of a priest. And their idea is like, dang, if all Christians sounded like that, I think I'd become part of their team. So just a moment of this priest talking, and I hope a commercial doesn't click up. Bear with me. I'll try to get through it. That happens sometimes. But
by what is happening in Gaza. If you are not shaken to your core, there is something wrong with your humanity. And if we as Christians are not outraged by the genocide, by the weaponization of the Bible to justify it, there is something wrong with our Christian witness, and we are compromising the credibility of our gospel message. If you fail to call this a genocide, it is on you. It is a sin and a darkness you willingly embrace. Some have not even called for a ceasefire. I'm talking about churches. I feel sorry for you. We will be okay. Despite the immense blow we have endured, we, the Palestinians, will recover. We will rise. We will stand up again from the midst of destruction, as we have always done as Palestinians. But for those who are complicit, I feel sorry for you. Will you ever recover from this? Your charity and your words of shock after the genocide won't make a difference. Words of regret won't suffice for you.
Okay. And so why is there no response? And I should have just jumped over to you, but as long as I'm kind of going, I'm going to read for a moment from an article or a chapter I just submitted. And so we observe in the population today. What we observe in the population today are the three destructive symptoms of peoples whose minds have been controlled by an alien force. This is part of the egregor. This is from our book last week, 1992, Michael Hoffman, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, talking about the revelation of the method, where we just love the Diddy stories. We just love the Epstein stories, but we don't want to talk about this, right? We don't want to talk about this. I think he kind of nailed it, in my opinion. So what are the three forces? Amnesia, loss of memory, abula. Apathy, i.e., that's the loss of interest in events vital to our own health and survival. Amnesia, forgetting the, abula, apathy, abula, i.e., loss of will. Apathy, loss of interest in events vital to our own health and survival, and amnesia. All of these are nearly universal among the population today and gaining a greater foothold each and every day. We argue the church's hierarchy in today's social media, sorry to sound like a hater, social media influencers demonstrate the three destructive symptoms of a corrupted consciousness when they refuse to see Judaism as a theological rival from the church, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And that their mission, as we say all the time on Memory Hole Friday, is to destroy the church. How are you going to defend yourself? You can talk about transgender and abort. If you can't get to the roots, as the doctors of the church did, as the great saints, as the great martyrs, the people that built Christian civilization, when are we going to snap out of it and say there's an enemy in our list? If we can't name it, how can we defend ourselves? So those are the three elements: amnesia, abula, and apathy. We argue that the theological revival of the church, even the church hierarchy and social media influencers demonstrate these three destructive symptoms of a corrupted consciousness when they refuse to see Judaism as a theological rival to the church, even as churches are bombed without justification throughout the Middle East. Instead, Judaism is a pretext for the never revoked partnership in salvation history. Dialogue has replaced mission, coexistence replaced conversion. Their corrupted consciousness feeds this egregore of Americanism and the empire of spectacle, which is part of the great delusion that we are witnessing today. I feel like I've gotten out a big soapbox there. I'm sorry, y'all. John Carter, can you rescue me?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
I don't think you need to be rescuing, though. If you think about it, 300 years before the ratification of the Constitution, America was consecrated to the most blessed Trinity. And within years, decades afterwards, you had 1531, you had the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe, who introduced the Marian age, of the final age of the fight that started in Genesis 3:15 between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. So that's where we're at now. And if you think about Our Lady of Guadalupe predated La Salette, Lourdes, and Fatima. And with this inauguration, she opened up hostilities on American soil. She knew what was coming. Could see down the road the torch out in the New York Harbor, that torch of Lucifer's light, and in the serpent's battleship America, Captain America. So when you see that and put it into perspective, and then you think about the New Atlantis, written by Francis Bacon in 1627, a utopian world government, ideal commonwealth based on scientific knowledge, human reason, Luciferian inspiration of the light, whereby you replace divine revelation as the ultimate source of truth. And, you know, how often you hear this debate in the U.S. and, you know, I don't know, it's principally since COVID, when everyone's trying to figure out what in the heck's going on. Oh, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Well, you know, the country was founded on a system that granted equal rights and freedom to all, and to all beliefs. And as a result, the U.S. has no legitimate means to correct error. So that means it's on a path of auto destruction. It has been since its very founding, which was obviously Satan's goal. So, you know, another way to say it is that democracy may not promote evil, but it allows it to grow and to flourish, and it has no autoimmune system. And so this Americanism, this apostasy from divine truth, it's kind of time for us to wake up as society and realize that that's what's happening. Because, look, it's not right to kill people. It's not. It's a mortal sin, and what we're doing as a national scale needs to come to a stop. And it is 100%. The people behind it are the people of light, which are the Freemasonic powers that are controlled by the synagogue, and that is the truth. And that's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And that's whereby we shouldn't tolerate people anymore that don't bring this out in the open, and don't operate with the spirit of love, that we're commanded to love our enemies. And the church is going through its passion right now, and it's on the cross. And there's not many St. John standing around the cross right now. So, you know, that's very profound. It's hard to say as an American, you know, growing up and being indoctrinated and brainwashed, and to have this double-mindedness of how you can go and call someone a dink and have a body count to be your indicator of success in Vietnam, and you're waxing a once Catholic nation that, you know, was colonized by the French. It's just madness over and over again, and you wonder where PTSD comes from. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I was the most, you know, I teach to this day. I teach this. You know, I went into this at a doctoral level, both the IR, the foreign policy, and the American piece at a doctoral level. And that's why I'm Dr. Deep State. And so obviously I guzzled tons of Kool-Aid throughout my life. And I was part of an egregore of Protestantism. I thought that the Catholic Church was the conspiracy. I didn't realize that the grand cosmic conspiracy is against God and man, Christ and his church. And right now, in this passion and in the crisis of the church, we want to hold on with these ideologies. Go along, get along, have a platform. You can't talk about stuff like this. You're going to be a small platform because people are going to say, what do you want? Don't vote for Trump. What do you want us to do? Don't accept the system. So you just want to be some little fringe group just throwing out crazy ideas. And I'll say it again. Libertarianism has big crowds. There's never been no government in the world. It's a fantasy. You have think tanks and institutions and channels that just say, well, the answer is just no government. It's never happened. But there has been a properly arranged Christian order that we can come back to as base reality. So before I go over, I keep hogging the spot here. I want to read a little bit here, because what we're partially caught in as trads is that, you know, I'm not going to tell my neighbor, my friends, my relatives at a holiday, like, well, I'm, some kind of integralist, or let's like, they're going to get out of here with that stuff, you know. But this is how we were caught in the deception 5 years ago. This is how people were caught in the Trump deception, and all these nice things we're saying, and some people are going to be gravitating toward it because it's true. They'll be in another event and people will go, well, that's just crazy. Now I'm in survival mode, you know, and that's fine. But we have to spread this, you know. Father Fahey said, world doesn't work that way. We don't go back to the Middle Ages, but we spread the truths of what's always been real. And Christ ordained a social order, and it was accomplished. And we have to understand that for baseline reality. Instead, trads are caught in conservatism. And I just want to read briefly here. This is from chapter 4. There's so many other good academics writing in here, D.C. Schindler and so forth. And the one we're doing today, Willard. Willard Jones. Let me just read this. I hope it doesn't sound too lengthy, but it's called "The Problem with Quote Unquote conservative solutions, because as we've said before, it's the same thing. It's the same dang rodeo. You either got liberalism, classic, or progressive. It's still liberalism. It's been condemned by the church for a reason, because it takes minds, bodies, and souls away from reality. This isn't me talking. These are decrees from actual, these are dogmas and church thinking. But the church allowed Christian and American minds to become kosher. And what's embedded in the American Constitution, the Federalist Papers, and the Declaration of Independence is Kabbalistic thinking. It's this God of nature, which is really just a ruse for naturalism. We showed you last week, the goal here is a prison system. The eyeball is the Sabbatean one-eyed serpent. They were always winking all along. In the books we read this week, Benjamin Franklin read, they met at the Green Dragon. This is part of their, to create a not a heavenly Jerusalem, but the, as we say, I said in the right here, the egregore of earthly Jerusalem. It's just an inversion of God's plan. It takes the metaphysics of the true fullness of reality and makes it horizontal, naturalism. That's what the serpent in the garden was up to. So this is from Joseph May, The Problems with Conservatism. As opposed to being conservatism, the Catholic order, or he'll call it integralism, is restorative. It rebuilds our minds, bodies, and souls by its very nature. It escapes the Kabbalism, the biopolitics embedded in our institutions and our very constitution that subvert our mind, bodies, and souls. So we do not seek to slow down, to win small victories here, to place all hope in a Supreme Court there, to play on liberalism's turf and under liberalism's rules of a morally neutral state, which is obvious. Okay. Near unlimited free speech, or functional religious indifferentism. Integralism seeks a total break with enlightenmentism. And that was just the light of Lucifer saying that the Catholic world order was medieval. It's antiquated. Don't even look back. And that's what the multiverse is. Just taking away entirely from that visual economy, from that language that gets us back to God's revelation and his desire for unity and order according to what he prescribes. Okay. Integralism seeks a radical break with the Enlightenment, Protestant, Freemason foundings of the entire Western political order established in 1789 and 1776, i.e. the Egregore of Americanism, a break with this thinking and a restoration of the true, the good, and the beautiful. Our vision of the political order is not a pathetic nostalgia for some dubious, ephemeral conception of an alleged golden age. Again, like the 1950s. So alleged golden age of the 1950s, where there was a chicken in every pot and so forth. We scorn the limitlessness of the Make America Great Again. We know that only by returning to the principles and structures of Christendom can we hope to bring about the social kingship of Christ and true human happiness. True human happiness. We can't get it from chasing our own tail, from keeping up with the Joneses. This is what St. Thomas called a debased ecstasy. It's a self-referential, horizontal reality. We need to get back to baseline, the transcendent frame, together with the eminent frame, the fullness of reality. Yes, we are going to anger the left when we outlaw abortion and other social ills, and probably call for just war theory again. But just as strongly, the true integralists will be the enemy of conservatives. So you piss everybody off. When we come for the mindless accumulation of wealth, their usury, their functional reserve banking system, their dubious stock market, and their war on the poor. All must give way to Christ. But what we finally notice now is what we have with all those implements of the stock market and usury. We have right now, stablecoin. We have Elon Musk, the tech bros. They're all building the golden dome, the surveillance state, the technological singularity. So whether we talk about the singularity or the metaverse, the basic concept right here, that's the infrastructure is being framed this week through parliaments and our congressional proposals this week. It's a mass surveillance system that has always been the plan of the Freemasons and the devil, which is this demonic beehive. And it's a trapping of the egregor. Our mimetic energy is all in lockstep because we don't want to step outside of this system. So this surveillance state that's being formed is a product of the usury of the capitalistic system, of the American mindset. We're building, when we get along to go along, when we consent to this system, we're building our own system in preparation for Antichrist. And there will be a point in the story, according to the book of the Apocalypse, where you will have no more free will. You will exchange the image of God for the image of man. And at that point, you will wish that you could die, but cannot, according to sacred scripture. So this is the idea of recognizing Americanism and just saying, what are you, some medieval nerds? It's part of getting out of the great deception, because we're living in an age where in our own lifetimes, we might have to make some very important decisions. And we saw a prototype of that 5 years ago. All of the pressure to take it, and the possibility that if you don't, you might not be able to play ball, go to the shop, etc., buy or sell. So we have to start thinking in these terms all the way back to our apostles and blessed Saint Stephen, and have that spirit of martyrdom and militancy simultaneously. And I think in that frame of mind, we can fight this egregore of Americanism. Indeed, it's the egregore of Lucifer. Again, I got on my bandstand there. Justin, can you help me out here and kind of tie some things together? We should probably pull some of this together.
Yeah, I mean, the question may come down to solutions, right? And I mean, that's kind of what we're getting at with like what we were talking about with like the Willard Andrew Willard Jones article and stuff like that. The solution really is to stop buying into the Americanism metaframe, stop buying into the egregore, the mind virus, and you have to reframe reality in a counter-revolutionary way. Remember, these people are revolutionaries, as Catholics are supposed to be counter-revolutionaries. That's why I'm always a big proponent of Catholic action, and because that's the correct way to restore Christendom. Is you have to create a Catholic counterculture, counter-resistance, and the way you do that is by staying outside the egregore. Like, for instance, when we started, when I helped founded this Catholic action group here in Cincinnati, the Christ is King Action Ministries, one of the first things we did was set up a PMA, a private membership association. Why do you do that? Well, because when you set up a PMA, everything, all the transactions and stuff that happen within the PMA are private and not subject to the public law, right? They're subjected to private law, which is law between two people. And a lot of people don't even understand this. They're just like, well, isn't anything that happens no. Literally, and this is what Andrew Willard Jones talks about. Literally, every transaction is like being taken over by public domain, by the state, right? And so we have to privatize things, right? Like we are, it's funny as the capitalists say that they're all about private property and private this, private that. What they're really about is this, corporate takeover of things, right? They're really like, it's public. Like the stock market is public. Everything is made public, right? They're not about private rights or private property or anything at all. Catholics really are more so. Like we believe in more corporatism or distributism, where the more people have ownership, private ownership of things, right? And where these large corporations, these large soulless elite controlled things are hard to even become a reality, right? But anyways, I'm going all over the place here.
No,
Anyways,
it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
The
Catholic
point
state.
being made is that you have to separate yourself from this egregore. We have to consciously do it. We have to engage in Catholic action. We have to create intentional Catholic communities, create
Yes.
private membership associations, create
Yes.
Catholic action groups where men and women can get together and exchange goods and services and ideas and build these intentional communities. In a similar way that the Amish do. That's one thing. You can criticize all the Amish all you want, but that's the one thing they do right, I would say, is they create these intentional communities. Even then, it's unfortunately, it's almost impossible, even like the Amish can't do this, to break yourself completely away from the state, right? We live in the American empire, and it's, even like these intentional communities like the Amish or even like Indian reservations and stuff like that are still subject somewhat to the American imperial state. And you don't second guess this, the America imperial state, it is an empire, but we have to do our best to separate ourselves as best as possible. Like, be in the world, not of the world, as is always said. And that's kind of the challenge, but it is something that we're asked to do, and we should do, and we should consciously start getting together and doing it more and working together to build this Catholic counter-cultural movement, right? And only through doing that will we be able to fight this egregore.
That's perfect. That's how we have to think. And that's part of what our locals community does. I guess I'm sounding like I'm pimping for the channel here, but links are in the description. Just if this is new language and it seems like so edgy, this is where the avant-garde of the very best and most important Catholic thinkers are dealing with these questions right now, one of which is D.C. Schindler. I'll read from the back of my book. Theo Howard was nice enough to give me a blurb back here. He's saying, today, not only are we afflicted by, again, links in the description, In Pursuit of the Metaverse. Today, not only are we afflicted by layers of fake news, but our money is fake. Our jobs are fake. Our education is fake. Our politics is fake. And our media is fake. All because ultimately our culture is fake. D.C. Schindler has written, this is important, the opposite of abstraction is incarnation. That's what this whole system of the oligarchs has been doing for 2,000 years, this naturalization. And it's an abstraction of everything. And that's what Catholic state is. Get back, and that's what Andrew Willard Jones is saying. We got to get back to the real. And obviously the virtual reality is taking us into this ultimate metaverse. Okay, so D.C. Schindler has written, the opposite of abstraction is incarnation. This is the devil taking the transcendent concept and turning it inside out and inverting it. That's what the snake in the garden has always done. D.C. Schindler, his father, was the first person, a major 20th century, mid 20th century critic of what we're talking about, liberalism and Americanism. And D.C. Schindler said, in his life, it was like beating his head against the wall. Even though he's recognized as brilliant, D.C. Schindler says only maybe in the last 10 years that people are open to seeing that at least this is true, that they get that the philosophical argument is true. Now, what do we do? And I think a good starting point is with what Catholic state just did. Dr. Haugen, I don't want to put myself in the third person here. Dr. Haugen is accurately aware that ours is a dying culture because it is based on diluting abstractions and simulacrum, on an ontology of becoming rather than an ontology of being, on an exclusively immanent frame as opposed to a transcendent frame. And then he's kind of saying in this richly commodious book, I don't want to praise the book. That's the idea. It's going Americanism, as John Carter identified, from Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, the New Atlantis. We're building that empire on the hill that the Calvinists had this idea. And it's away from the church. It's going to be built on abstractions. It's away from the life of the saints, of the transcendent form, of the universals. And it's built on this Luther's idea of nominalism. It's a constructed reality. Law is just a construction. Something's illegal just because people say it's illegal, not because God's revelation said, thou shalt not kill. And it's just on a slippery slope that's taking us into the ultimate abstraction. And we see it right now. They're going to get rid of money and bring a digital coin. They want to connect our minds, bodies, and souls to this internet of everything, or the internet of bodies. That is the metaverse. And you'll be locked into, in one sense, that's what communism does. There is no gods. There's just a superstructure in the base. And those that control the base are going to call the shots, the pictures in your head. We have to kind of get, before it's too late, away from this enclosure of this self-defined reality, which will be, Zuck's metaverse. And he's obviously working in conjunction with the powers of the world. So that's my shtick for today. And John, do you want to just tune us out with the last closing comments and ideas?
Masonic democracy is to politics what Jewish usury is to economics.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a pincer attack right now as a society. When you drive down any main street in the U.S. and you see on the same block, CVS and Walgreens, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, everything has been consolidated into 2 or 3 businesses, and they've wiped out family-owned businesses. And it is going exponentially fast right now. Anyone who's in business understands that. So if you put this into bigger terms, the spirit of 76, what spirit was that? Because there's no such thing as secular government. Government needs a belief system. And the fact is that it was not the Trinity. It was not a Trinitarian God. It was little g, big L, Lucifer.
Yep.
And there's no doubt about it. It's a satanic form of government. That spirit of 76 is a direct thread, unbreakable, all the way to the spirit of Vatican II. So if you're Catholic and you don't see that, and you don't want to see it, well, then shame on you. And be courageous enough to stand up and look a gift horse in the mouth with people who've read profusely to figure this stuff out. And anyway, I think that's where, putting this into perspective, you had a massive sin, and then you had the flood, and that flood, or what was on your book, the Tower of Babel,
Right.
So that spirit came back in the United States of America. This is Satan's rearguard action. This is his last chance to try to maintain dominance, and he's about to get his ass kicked. And so if we can look at it in that perspective, that his last base of operations is the U.S., and we need a counterinsurgency in the U.S. amongst Catholics to stand up for truth and stand by Catholic teaching. There is only one truth, and there is only one salvation, and it's through the Catholic Church, period. And it brings me great pleasure to say that, and that this at the end of these apocalyptic calamities that are happening right now, this revealing that's going on, it's actually an exciting time, because when a woman is in her labor pains, that final hour is about to happen, but then afterwards comes great joy. And so we're on the cusp of something very tremendous happening, and we're blessed to be alive these times. But there should be no fear to come out and embrace the true Catholic faith. And that's what I think this Americanism baloney needs to be blown out of the air.
That was excellent. Catholic State, thank you guys. Really, I was really happy with how we pulled this together, and we're just scratching the surface. We're going to come down to locals, and we got some really edgy videos we want to show briefly, and kind of really be able to let our hair down over there a little bit on locals with our community. And I thank you all for taking the time to watch our deep state video today. And we will be back with you. So see y'all.